Welcome to IllinoisPrep.com. Team 6 of our playoff previews, the legendary Mount Carmel with the legendary coach Frank Lenti. 7-2 with an opening game loss by 6 to Simeon, and they have a loss at St. Rita. Both very respectable teams, combined 17-1, and they run that option attack, and it's nice to have a stud running back, and they have one in Michael Banks.
Yeah, Michael Banks is a big part of Mount Carmel. Not only that, but you see him on defense too when they get into, really key, positions or times in the game.
Yeah, we saw that against Loyola late.
Yeah.
He was playing DB on those really bigger receivers, and he was doing a pretty decent job. So it'll be interesting to see how much he plays both ways.
And I like that from the standpoint, you don't play 100% on defense, but when it's time to get certain people out there and you need to stop, I'm going to put you out there. So Michael Banks is going to be a big key into Mount Carmel's success in the playoffs.
Well, and to the same effect, Chris Suchka, the quarterback, you can say, quarterback's always important, but especially when you run this option attack, so much decision-making. Do you keep it? Do you hand it off to the up back? Do you pitch it? And I think that it's so difficult to prepare for an offense like this because you have to be so disciplined, have every assignment down, that if you can run this offense effectively, you're going to beat almost everybody in a week-to-week basis because there's just not enough time to prepare.
Yeah, and just in the last game, Suchka carried for 7 times 145 yards, while Michael Banks carried a total of 7 times for 50 yards. So, when you have that type of offense, it can go either way, and it's really up to a good quarterback to say, hey, you want to take Michael Banks out? That's okay. I can rush for 100-plus yards and stuff like that. So it's a tough offense to run, but if you have the right people in the right place, then you're going to go far with it.
Yeah, and they're definitely battle tested. We talked about Simeon, and we were at that Loyola game, an overtime game at Loyola, where they were struggling, with Loyola all game, but at the end of the day, they made enough plays, got it to overtime, got the ball, if I remember correctly, got the ball first in overtime, went down, scored, and then came up with a turnover on defense. And those are the type of stands that you're going to have to make deep into the playoffs when you start playing these better teams. And so not many teams are as prepared as Mount Carmel is.
No, and I'll tell you what, looking at their first round against Bolingbrook, I have Mount Carmel winning. We both have Mount Carmel winning, but I think that's going to be a good game. Yes, Bolingbrook is 5-4. But there's a lot of athletes on the other side of the field,
especially that quarterback, sophomore, and he's probably going to start getting looks for some big-time colleges going forward. And again, we talked about, or I mentioned how defenses have to be so disciplined against Mount Carmel. They're going to have to be disciplined against Bolingbrook because he's got the ability. I saw him in the opener against Downers Grove South. He's got the ability to just burn you with his legs.
Exactly.
And so if it was me, I'd have at least one guy on a spy every play just to try and cut off an angle and wait for those safeties and corners to come up from the secondary and make the play, because he's the type of guy who, Mount Carmel's clearly the better team, but he's one of those players that can just win a game by himself.
Now would you compare the quarterback at Bolingbrook to Simeon in the athletic standpoint? Because Mount Carmel played Simeon, we saw the end result. Obviously they've had some time to correct the issues that they've had, but you have Bolingbrook who has an incredible quarterback themselves.
Yeah, the biggest thing for Bolingbrook and the biggest difference is they need the other people on that offense, the skill position players, to really step up and make it easier for their quarterback to open some running lanes. Because I think if I was Mount Carmel, I would dare him to pass and say, let's see how much faith you have in your receivers and, passing to your running backs out of the backfield and make them score probably 2 touchdowns that way before you said, okay, maybe we need to give them some running lanes to dedicate to stopping the pass. Because especially young quarterbacks, even once they get to the college level, so many of them, if they have that elite speed and agility as a runner, would much more comfortable tucking it down and running than having to make a read with a zone secondary and trying to hit a guy, an open receiver. And so I think that's what you make him do, make him make those reads. And I think, again, like I said, only a sophomore. This kid's going to get just so much better over the next 2 years. And this would be his first time as a starting quarterback on the varsity in the playoffs. There's a good chance, going to be some nerves.
Of course.
And probably some mistakes in the way of interceptions, and that's one of the things that you don't see that often out of Mount Carmel because they're in the playoffs every year, and Frank Lenti's been to the playoffs about 30 million times, and so he
ever
knows
since the playoffs started. I'm pretty sure he's been there,
and so he knows a thing or two about winning some football games once we hit late October into November, and that's why I like Mount Carmel to make it to the semifinals. I think that's almost like, Mount Carmel made the semis.
Not a big deal. It's like, okay.
And so I think that's why I like Marist to beat them in the semis. But, I mean, there's two teams there who both expect to be playing for a state title.
Yeah.
And so that'd be an incredible game if it gets to that point. You like York to get there. I think that'd be really interesting to see how a team like York, who doesn't make deep runs every year, reacted to playing a team like a Mount Carmel on that big stage. Just on history, especially last year, if I was Mount Carmel, I wouldn't want to see Marist, who's made that deep run before.
Exactly.
I'd rather see some fresh blood that maybe isn't used to playing that deep. It might be a little too hyped and
or just happy to be there.
Yeah. Oh, so
I mean, because I know when we made the second round and we got whooped by St. Rita, there's a little bit of me just happy that we made it out of the first round. I'm like, hey, we made it back. So, if I'm Mount Carmel, I would definitely rather see York than a Marist, because Marist is saying, oh, we knew we were going to be here, and we're expecting to play you on our way to the championship.
Right.
So, the 8A, it's definitely wide open in several areas for a team to come in and, establish dominance.
You mentioned, being happy to be in that second round. You want to mention anything about
no, it's too long ago. I'm gonna just let it go.
Okay, it's over. Mount Carmel's won a lot of playoff games since then.
Yes, they have.
Lombard South, maybe not so many.
I'll just let that one go. I appreciate you giving me the opening to say that, but it's not even important.
Okay, because there might have been a running back that talks a little Mount Carmel trash for that game too. I don't know anything about that. But so yeah, I think Mount Carmel definitely one of probably 4 teams. When you look at the bracket, and you're like, they're probably one of the 4 maybe co-favorites.
Yeah.
When you're looking with a Stevenson, maybe a Loyola, maybe a Glenbard North, and a Marist.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see what upsets might happen and what different matchups we might end up getting. Any final thoughts on Mount Carmel?
I just think if they can get past Bolingbrook, which I'm sure they're expecting themselves to, I think they'll have honestly, I think they'll have an easier second round with either Downers Grove South or Neuqua Valley. And then from that standpoint, it could be Sandburg, LT, several teams in the quarters. I'm sorry. So,
yeah, that's our Mount Carmel preview. Certainly the Caravan looking good for another deep playoff run. And be sure to tune in next time for playoff preview number 7.